faithfully sharing value and exploring great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, we're diving into The Incredible Me. The book's subtitle is The Psychology of Self-Development. Everyone has areas they want to change in life. Some folks want to beat procrastination. Others dream of a new job, but change, it's not easy. When people try to move forward, they often hit a lot of resistance. This resistance comes not just from outside, but from within too. It's like two selves battling in our hearts, one longing for change, the other one blocks change. The author Chen Haxian believes the resistance ties to our psychological defense mechanisms. These mechanisms crave stability, control, and reject growth, causing conflict between our wish to change and our actions. Many get lost in this conflict, unable to find motivation or direction to keep changing. Chen Haxian is a psychology PhD from Zhejiang University, a renowned counselor with 13 years of experience. In his work, he's guided clients through major life shifts, employees voicing opinions, partners rebuilding intimacy, entrepreneurs choosing paths at crossroads. These experiences convinced him everyone has incredible potential inside. Facing self-development hurdles helps us become better. In this book, he blends theories like cognitive therapy, family therapy, and adult development with his counseling to cover barriers to change at behavioral, cognitive, and relational levels, plus methods for real change and growth. Now, I'll break down the main content starting from these three levels. First, how to achieve self-development behaviorally. Many know this. Things like gaming less or reading more seem easy but are tough to do and stick with long term. The author thinks a key reason is everyone's psychological comfort zone, which hinders change efforts. Many think the comfort zone means a familiar environment, but that's a misunderstanding. The comfort zone is our default way of handling situations, like whether to fight or flee when faced with danger. When facing challenges, do you prefer solving them yourself or seeking help? These are different ways of coping with our environment. These methods develop from our past experiences. The biggest advantage of psychological comfort zones is the sense of control. We feel anxious when encountering unfamiliar new problems. To eliminate these feelings, people easily retreat into their comfort zone, using familiar ways to cope. This gives us security, but real problems are ever-changing. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. If we stay in the comfort zone, we can't develop new coping strategies. How can we step out to change behavior? The author believes the key is creating new successful experiences that build confidence and security, gradually expanding our psychological comfort zone. The author introduces three methods. First, testing life assumptions. Behind many rigid coping styles lie our deep-seated assumptions about the world. When we see how unreasonable these assumptions are, our original coping methods get shaken. We can ask, what benefits does my current behavior bring me? If I act differently, what's my biggest fear? To uncover unreasonable assumptions, consider the author's client who always acted super positive at work, cracking jokes, cheering others up, hypersensitive to everyone's emotions. If anyone seemed unhappy, he'd wonder if he'd caused it. He felt exhausted but didn't know how to change. This reveals his life assumption. If I'm not upbeat, I'm worthless to the team and unlikable. Exactly this assumption shaped his current coping style. To test this, the author designed an experiment. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, the client would stay positive and attentive as usual. But on Tuesdays and Thursdays, he'd ignore others' emotions and focus solely on his work. He also recorded daily mood changes for himself and the team to observe results. After a week, the client reported that despite his changed attitude, the team's atmosphere remained largely unchanged. He even asked a familiar colleague who said they hadn't noticed any difference in him at all. This experiment shook the client's life assumption. He realized others weren't that focused on him and they wouldn't dislike him just because he wasn't always positive. And so he stopped treating positivity as a mandatory task, living much more relaxed. The second method for changing behavior is the small steps principle. This means identifying the first action needed towards a goal and focusing only on what you can do right now. Many resist change because goals seem too distant, full of unknowns and risks, causing anxiety that pushes them back to comfort zones. For this, the author believes the key is shifting focus from distant goals to present actions. Sometimes change is like dominoes. Just tip the first piece to trigger a chain reaction. By experiencing real progress and benefits through action, we gain continuous motivation. A psychological technique called the miracle question helps. Assume success already happened, then retrace steps to find your first move. A senior college student came for counseling. He needed to pass 4 courses to graduate or face expulsion. Overwhelmed, he hid in his dorm playing games, avoiding campus to dodge questions about his progress. The author asked, "If a miracle happened and you graduated, what first step would you have taken?" Different perspectives greatly impact our psychology. When thinking about unachieved goals, we easily imagine obstacles and setbacks, but assuming success already occurred helps visualize how it happened, revealing first steps and boosting optimism to act. Facing the question, the client replied, "At minimum, I'd normalize my sleep schedule and eat meals on time." So the author had him start with regular cafeteria meals. Later, the client met a classmate preparing for the GRE in the cafeteria. The classmate felt lonely studying alone, so they agreed to have breakfast together every day and then study together. During this process, the client's condition gradually improved. Some people might think this example is too idealistic. What if the client encounters other classmates who mock him for not studying hard enough? The author believes that action is the prerequisite for achieving any goal. As long as you're willing to act, you can always find solutions to specific problems you encounter. And if the client is indeed mocked by classmates, the author could use the previous method of testing life assumptions to help him see clearly. Mockery isn't scary. He can ignore it and keep doing what he wants. The third method for changing behavior is creating an environment. Sometimes taking the first step towards change isn't hard. What's hard is maintaining temporary changes. We are constantly influenced by our environment. Different environments trigger different actions. Many students specifically go to the library to study instead of staying in their dorms. Because everyone is studying in the library, it's easier to focus in that atmosphere. So to maintain newly formed behaviors, we need to create a suitable environment for them. The author knows a girl named Shaojia who works at a highly competitive startup and needs to learn many new things. Shaojia made many plans for reading and studying, but after work, she always can't help spending time watching American dramas, which makes her feel like she's wasting time and very frustrated. The author suggested that Shaojia create a dedicated learning environment at home, like placing a computer with only work software on the desk and keeping only study-related materials on the desk. She could also put up some motivational pictures on the desk. When sitting at the desk, Shaojia can only study. If she wants to relax or entertain, she must go to another place, like the sofa or bed. After persisting like this for a while, the desk became a dedicated learning environment. As long as she sits at the desk, Shaojia automatically enters study mode and is less easily distracted by entertainment. Easy to say. Here, let's summarize the first part. The main reason it's hard for us to change is that it's difficult to step out of our psychological comfort zone. We can use the method of testing life assumptions. Using the small steps principle and creating environments helps us step out of psychological comfort zones, initiating and sustaining behavioral changes. Who we are is reflected not just in actions, but in how we perceive the world through our thinking patterns, which also shape our behavior. Now for part 2, how to achieve self-development at the cognitive level. The author divides thinking patterns into 2 types: positive growth mindset and negative defensive mindset. The growth mindset makes people flexible and resilient. brave to tackle new challenges, embracing change and possibilities. A defensive mindset makes people conservative and rigid, fearing failure and challenges, running everything to stay the same. Cognitive self-development means shifting from defensive to growth mindset. The author categorizes defensive thinking into three types: fixed mindset, should mindset, and absolutist thinking. Let's examine each. People with fixed mindset believe abilities are relatively fixed. Rather than doing things well, they focus on maintaining their smart self-image. They easily quit challenges, fearing difficult tasks might expose their inadequacy, even viewing effort as shameful. In their view, needing effort to achieve something just proves they're not smart enough. They're more likely to take criticism as personal attacks rather than feedback for improvement. Next, the should mindset, refusing to accept reality while forcing it to match imagined rules. The author met a mother always complaining her son was slow and immature, though the child simply slept in mornings and procrastinated on homework. A bit of procrastination, something most kids experience. But this mother believed her child should be a perfect, smart, obedient kid. Her constant corrections made him more rebellious. The author says the core problem with should mindset is intolerance when reality differs from expectations. When ordinary people find goals unattainable, they usually accept reality and redirect their focus. People with a should mindset refuse to admit the gap between reality and their wishes. In their view, their wishes must come true.
When wishes clash with reality, they get stuck in this state, unwilling to let go, and fall into anxiety and depression.
Next, absolutist thinking. This mindset makes us absolutize the harm we suffer, constantly expanding our defensive boundaries and making us afraid to face reality. For example, Sha Wang, fresh out of college, joined a startup where the boss was super critical and often yelled at him. After 6 months, Sha Wang got fired. If Sha Wang had minor psychological trauma, he might think he wasn't a good fit for the company or the boss was the problem. That's a totally normal reaction. If he broadened his defensive scope a bit, he might feel he's not cut out for startups. Broaden it more, he might think he shouldn't work for any company and should aim for a civil service job. If expanded further, Xiaolong would feel he can't handle workplace relationships and stress, so he's unfit for any job. In the end, he might choose to stay home as a NEET. From thinking this one company was awful to believing all jobs are scary, this process of expanding defenses is exactly how Xiao Wang absolutized the harm. The author believes all three defensive thinking types share the trait of cutting us off from real-world interactions, immersing us in abstract ideas, and making us complacent. To escape defensive thinking and develop a growth mindset, the key is to let go of attachment to mental constructs and dive into the real world for continuous action and experience, such as enjoying life's rich possibilities. How exactly do we do it? Here, we mainly introduce two thinking tools. The first is creative thinking, which gives us sustained motivation to engage with reality. The author points out that many people use problem-escaping thinking to push themselves into action. But this approach is tough to sustain long-term. For instance, someone feeling idle and life too decadent gets anxious and sets up a bunch of study plans. If his goal is just to shake off that decadence, it's hard to keep studying long-term because once he studies seriously, he won't feel decadent anymore. His anxiety eases and the motivation naturally fades. Soon he slips back into idleness until anxiety hits again, prompting him to act once more. Faithfully sharing value and exploring great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, we're diving into The Incredible Me. The book's subtitle is The Psychology of Self-Development. Everyone has areas they want to change in life. Some folks want to beat procrastination, others dream of a new job. But change, it's not easy. When people try to move forward, they often hit a lot of resistance. This resistance comes not just from outside, but from within too. Hmm. It's like two selves battling in our hearts. One longing for change, the other one blocks change. The author, Chen Haxian, believes the resistance ties to our psychological defense mechanisms. These mechanisms crave stability, control, and reject growth, causing conflict between our wish to change and our actions. Many get lost in this conflict, unable to find motivation or direction to keep changing. Chen Haishan is a psychology PhD from Zhejiang University, a renowned counselor with 13 years of experience. In his work, he's guided clients through major life shifts, employees voicing opinions, partners rebuilding intimacy, entrepreneurs choosing paths at crossroads. These experiences convinced him everyone has incredible potential inside. Facing self-development hurdles helps us become better. In this book, he blends theories like cognitive therapy, family therapy, and adult development with his counseling to cover barriers to change at behavioral, cognitive, and relational levels, plus methods for real change and growth. And now I'll break down the main content starting from these three levels. First, how to achieve self-development behaviorally. Many know this. Things like gaming less or reading more seem easy but are tough to do and stick with long term. The author thinks a key reason is everyone's psychological comfort zone, which hinders change efforts. Oh, many think the comfort zone means a familiar environment, but that's a misunderstanding. The comfort zone is our default way of handling situations, like whether to fight or flee when faced with danger. As a result, fixed mindset focuses on intelligence we can't control, ignoring the effort and skill development we can control. Should mindset tries to control reality with imagined rules. When control fails, it leads to anxiety and unease.
Absolutist thinking demands infinite expansion of control, yet makes us abandon controllable aspects after setbacks.
The control dichotomy method means dividing tasks into controllable and uncontrollable parts, then focusing effort on what we can control. This helps escape defensive thinking and focus on real action. Consider a PhD student needing to publish in international journals to graduate. He felt extremely anxious. He told the author that publication success wasn't within his control. He couldn't know if data would be ideal, if his advisor would have time to help, or how journal editors would review his paper. Thinking about these uncontrollable factors made him too anxious to research. That's all true, but the author noted many controllable aspects. While he couldn't guarantee ideal data, he could run more experiments to improve the odds. He couldn't control his advisor's schedule, but could follow up more to increase feedback chances. Without effort on controllable aspects, the paper would never get done. All right, let's summarize part 2. Cognitive self-development means shifting from defensive to growth mindset. There are 3 defensive thinking types: fixed mindset, should mindset, and absolutist thinking. They disconnect us from real-world interactions, trapping us in abstract imagination. Regarding creative thinking and the control dichotomy method, we can let go of mental attachments and develop growth mindset through ongoing real-world engagement. Previous sections discussed self-development individually, but since everyone exists in relationships, connections also shape behavior. Part 3 explores relational self-development. We often assume a stable self exists independently, with fixed personality traits and preferences. Oh, from a relational perspective, we find that the same person can show different personalities under different conditions. Some people are quiet and shy with strangers, but in front of close friends, they might become lively, outgoing, and talk nonstop. Some work hard in the office, actively helping colleagues take on lots of responsibilities, but back home, they just lounge on the sofa and push everything onto their partner. Here, there isn't a fixed introverted self or hardworking self. Instead, different selves developed in different relationships. So when problems arise, we can think about what relationships they occur in and how to trigger change by adjusting those relationships. The author introduces two common types of relational problems in the book. The first type is differences in role expectations between people. What does that mean? This means that in every relationship, we play different roles. At work, we're employees. Back home, we're spouses or parents. When playing different roles, others have different expectations of us. At work, the boss expects us to deliver more results. At home, the partner expects us to care for the kids more. Meanwhile, in these relationships, we also have role expectations for ourselves. If others' expectations of our role differ from our own, it can lead to conflict. The author saw an incident where a husband lent money to a friend without his wife's consent. 200,000 yuan, and the friend returned it on time as promised after 10 days. After getting the money back, the husband told his wife, who got very angry and blamed him for lending money casually. The husband said he knew the friend was trustworthy, so he lent it, but the wife was still furious. The husband complained to the author, thinking his wife was too stingy. The author believes that on the surface, the wife is mad about lending money casually, but actually, she's angry the husband didn't consult her beforehand. From a relational perspective, this is a difference in role expectations. The wife expects her husband's role to be a partner who respects her opinions, discussing important family decisions together. And when facing a friend's request, the husband expects himself to decide alone as the head of the household without asking his wife. Otherwise, I'd lose face in front of friends. If they keep arguing about whether to lend money, they'll never resolve it. That's not the core issue. The right solution is communicating at the relational level to discuss their differing role expectations. For example, the husband could say, "I wanted to tell you, but worried you'd disagree. That'd make me lose face." Then they can agree how to handle similar situations in the future. This makes reconciliation easier. Expressing needs relationally is an unfamiliar communication style for us. We rarely discuss relationships directly in daily talk, but that doesn't mean we're not communicating relationally. We just turn it into subtext. The subtext hides behind what we say. A classic example: a couple argues. The guy says, "All right, fine, my fault, okay." The girl presses, "Then tell me exactly where you went wrong." Some might think the girl's too aggressive, but relationally, when he says "my fault," he really means, "I don't want to explain whatever you say." While she seems unreasonable, she's actually saying, "I don't want you brushing me off like this." So actually, she's not wrong. It's the guy who's lacking sincerity in communication. Therefore, in communication, we should stay alert, constantly considering what the other person says. Understanding things relationally helps us spot role expectation differences quickly, communicate more effectively, and avoid conflicts. The second common relational problem is relationship entanglement. This means people lack boundaries. Closely connected, yet tormenting each other, wanting to escape but unable to change, forming complex knots. Relationship entanglement has many forms. Here are two common ones. First, triangulation. When two people have problems, instead of solving directly, they bring in a third party to stabilize the relationship. Triangulation is especially common in families. Loving parents disagree, then use the child to make demands. "This is bad for the kid," or "the child wants it this way," making it hard to refute. This puts the child in distress. She becomes extremely cautious in speech and actions, terrified of triggering parental conflicts. Triangulation also happens between couples and mothers-in-law. Mothers complain to sons about daughters-in-law. Wives complain to husbands about mothers-in-law. The husband caught in between faces dilemmas. Any slight leaning draws accusations of being unsupportive. Another common entanglement is, "It's all my fault." This describes people who assume responsibility for others' actions or feelings, carrying unnecessary burdens that trap them in guilt. The author had a client, an accomplished young woman who believed her parents' marital problems stemmed from her leaving for boarding school in middle school. Well, since their argument started then, She felt staying home could have eased their relationship, but the author sees this as a misconception. Marital issues can only be resolved by the couple themselves. Children can't alter spousal perceptions. Why do people shoulder others' responsibilities? The author believes it stems from our innate craving for closeness, making us want to bear others' pain, especially in important relationships. We refuse to admit our powerlessness over relational problems. We delude ourselves into thinking we can solve others' issues, then internalize the blame. Whether triangulation or false guilt, the author sees relational entanglements rooted in blurred boundaries, confusing others' business with our own. This makes people oversensitive and introverted, absorbing others' emotions and responsibilities as their own. In reality, we're distinct individuals. How others think, it's just impossible to control, like eggs in their own shells. If one forces merger with other shells, all get broken. Mature self-development means distinguishing others' business from our own, building healthy boundaries. This boundary setting process is called task separation in psychology, a theory proposed by renowned psychologist Alfred Adler, faithfully sharing value and exploring great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, we're diving into The Incredible Me. The book's subtitle is The Psychology of Self-Development. Everyone has areas they want to change in life. Some folks want to beat procrastination, others dream of a new job. But change? It's not easy. When people try to move forward, they often hit a lot of resistance. This resistance comes not just from outside, but from within too. It's like two selves battling in our hearts, one longing for change, the other one blocks change. The author, Chen Haixin, believes the resistance ties to our psychological defense mechanisms. These mechanisms crave stability, control, and reject growth, causing conflict between our wish to change and our actions. Many get lost in this conflict, unable to find motivation or direction to keep changing. Chen Haixin is a psychology PhD from Zhejiang University, a renowned counselor with 13 years of experience. In his work, he's guided clients through major life shifts, employees voicing opinions, partners rebuilding intimacy, entrepreneurs choosing paths at crossroads. These experiences convinced him everyone has incredible potential inside. Facing self-development hurdles helps us become better. In this book, he blends theories like cognitive therapy, family therapy, and adult development with his counseling to cover barriers to change at behavioral, cognitive, and relational levels, plus methods for real change and growth. Now I'll break down the main content, starting from these three levels. First, how to achieve self-development behaviorally. Many know this. Things like gaming less or reading more seem easy, but are tough to do and stick with long term. The author thinks a key reason is everyone's psychological comfort zone, which hinders change efforts. Oh, many think the comfort zone means a familiar environment, but that's a misunderstanding. The comfort zone is our default way of handling situations, like whether to fight or flee when faced with danger. When facing challenges, do you prefer solving them yourself or seeking help? These are different ways of coping with our environment. These methods develop from our past experiences. The biggest advantage of psychological comfort zones is the sense of control. And those who believe, I am the master of my life, will continuously seek methods and put them into practice to make life better. All right, The Incredible Me. That concludes our interpretation. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.